You're listening to the Neurospice and Life podcast.
I'm Hanna, sexologist, sensologist, lovable weirdo, oversharer, and not sorry about it.
And I'm Freya, alexithymic counsellor, mum, chaos wrangler, and happy little steamroller.
We're both late diagnosed, neurodivergent humans, and best mates.
Together, we made this podcast to shine a light on some of the unfair and unjust labels that define us, hurt us, and hold us back.
Whether you're neurotypical or neurodiverse, our podcast is for everybody and every brain that has ever been labelled.
Welcome back to the Spicy Life podcast. I'm Hanna.
I am Freya.
And this is part 2 of labelling.
Labels.
The second episode.
The second episode. Hopefully you're still with us. If not, that's fine too. I guess if you're not with us, you won't be hearing this. But anyway, that's good.
So in this episode, we'll be reframing.
Yeah.
We want to talk to you about labels as we see them, and also different ways to be able to navigate, to have that beautiful acceptance, and also to have that loving, compassionate and kindness towards yourself, whatever your labels may be.
Yep. And opening up space for maybe something else might be true.
Yeah.
Maybe two things can be true at the same time. Like, how wild would that be? But yeah, absolutely. It's really important that, we have this great part of our brain that allows us to reflect, and often it's reflecting in overdrive at 3 o'clock in the morning, which is helpful. Thanks, brain.
Yep.
But, using that part of our brain that can reflect to actually look at things a little bit differently and not just take the first thing our brain has told us is true or the first thing someone else has told us is true, because 9 times out of 10, it's not.
Yeah.
It is not at all.
So firstly, I kind of want to address the elephant in the room. I call him Frank.
I'm actually looking for an elephant at this point, given the amount of stuff we have in this sensory room.
There's a stuffed elephant in the next room.
There is actually, it's in the next room. I'm like, did she bring it in? But she didn't. So not an actual elephant.
Not an actual elephant.
Okay, right. That's the literal part of my brain. Yep.
And the thing, again, when I got diagnosed, I, whether inadvertently, on purpose or whatever, or just it was an impulsive response from people, was, first of all, no, you're not.
Yep.
And second of all was, oh, this is such a trend.
Oh, yes.
And I would like to point out to everybody that I did not pay the inordinate amount of money to get diagnosed, which is often a barrier for a lot of people.
A lot of us, yeah.
To get diagnosed, to be a part of a trend. I don't want to feel special. I don't want to, be able to use my label as an excuse to, be like, oh, I can't do that because I have ADHD, or I'm not going to do that because I have ADHD, or because I have autism, or whatever the case may be. And even the other day I was at the dog park and talking to an older couple about this podcast, and they asked me a question that I thought was really interesting, and they said, do you feel better now that you've got your diagnosis? And I went, well, yeah.
Yeah.
And they were quite surprised by that.
Yeah.
Because to them, being labelled with a diagnosis would have been such a hindrance in, dare I say it,
a bad label
in their day.
Yeah.
And the realization for me is that it actually came with a huge amount of relief, because knowing that it was my brain that was causing physiological, neurological, biological sort of responses within my body.
That's what our brains do.
Funnily enough, I've just explained what the brain does. But understanding that it's not me, in the sense of, like, my brain is me and I am my brain, but I'm also like beyond that.
Yeah.
But it was this kind of the conscious and the unconscious beliefs about myself that was actually holding me back. And when I started doing like more digging, I realized that it was actually due to a lot of the labels that I had been given as a result of the fact that I was neurodiverse and misunderstood. Yeah. And nobody knew because, again, growing up in the 80s and 90s as a woman, there was just the assumption that because it was all internalized and because I could mask extremely well, that I was, just really not trying hard enough, or that I was just inherently lazy.
Yeah.
And so being able to look back on that, and even though I can't change it, although sometimes I do fantasize about what I'd do if I had a time machine, I also know that that's, sort of, a bit of a sunken fallacy in the sense of, it's a fantasy, and that's all it'll ever be, and that's
It is
fine.
what it is. It was what it was.
But I also wouldn't be here right now.
Yeah.
If
you hadn't had this journey.
Absolutely. And so finding that if I can unpack these labels and actually sort of go, well, am I not jumping out of a plane, as I always said I was going to do before the time I hit 40, said I was always going to jump out of a plane and go parachuting.
Have you yet?
God, no.
Okay.
Because I realized it was this thing that I thought that I had to do in order to be brave. And
I was going to carve, I don't know if you remember this, I was going to carve an ice sculpture.
Vaguely?
Like a giant ice sculpture with a chainsaw. And anyone that's met me and knows my...
Please don't do that.
Knows my proprioception, like I'm the clumsiest person possibly in the history of the world. Like me and chainsaws is not a good idea.
Probably not a great idea.
Especially slippery, wet chainsaws in ice. Like that, no, bad idea.
Yeah.
But yes, again, I thought that would be something fun or brave or like creative to do. Yeah, so no plane jumping, no ice sculpting.
Well, I realized at a certain point, like I'd been holding on to this idea of how I was going to feel during it, which was terrified, but how I was going to feel after it with that amazing adrenaline rush. And I realized it got to a point where I just said, why do I keep committing to this thing that I will never do because I don't want to do it?
I don't actually want to do that.
And
that's not me.
It was just this realization. And so understanding that, maybe there were things that I was also potentially pushing myself or forcing myself to do that I just did not want to do. And just, we talk about this in one of the later episodes as well, is the power of no. And it's an amazing thing to be able to take back pieces of yourself just by saying no.
Just by saying no. And I think you've touched on something really important there, right? Because like with having a diagnosis, and whether you are self-diagnosed or self-identified or diagnosed by a medical professional, right? There's space for both, because to have a medical diagnosis, it requires a lot of things. It requires a lot of resources. So not just the financial resources to be able to see the professional that's able to do that, but you also need history, need evidence, particularly as late diagnosed, to prove, that it goes back into childhood and it's not something later that's happened to you, that this is how your brain is structured.
Yeah.
Because unless you've fallen into, an MRI machine at that age and they happen to understand what a neurodivergent brain would look like at that time, they need to know that this is how your brain is structured through your life, right, to be able to do that. And not many people necessarily have access to those records to be able to do that, to have advocates, to people that have been there for their entire life to do that. So for us, we're not concerned how you got here, like you're here and you're welcome.
Yeah.
But having that diagnosis, and it kind of like the way I talk about it is like, you've got Apple and Android, right? You've got two different things, right? They're both phones. For the record, she's Apple, I'm Android. Yep. You've got both are mobile phones, both are cell phones, whatever you decide, whatever it is you call them, they're both smartphones. They both serve a purpose. It's fine. The problem is that they both got things they're good at, both got things that they're not so good at. The problem is when you've been running an Android phone your entire life with an Apple operating manual, right, it's going to be frustrating as heck, right? Like it is going to be really, really difficult, and it's not going to work 90% of the time, and vice versa. So that having the diagnosis gives you the operating manual that explains why you might have certain preferences, why you might have certain traits, how your brain might influence the interactions between you and the outside world, right, and vice versa, and how you might interpret things or experience things. And so when you have the operating manual, it's a really great opportunity to then start looking at that and start looking at things in your life. And this is a big part of that unmasking journey, and I support a lot of women with that. A lot of mums doing that, right? But it's about where it's safe for you to start peeling back those layers, where it's safe for you to start questioning, because masking is a defensive mechanism. We put it on to protect ourselves, right? Because we don't feel safe, because we don't feel we can be ourselves, because we're going to end up in exile, right? Like, it comes back to that. So we mask up and we pretend to be this version of ourselves, which isn't right. It doesn't feel good, like the jumping out of planes. Like, yes, I'm going to jump out of a plane. I hate heights. I don't want to do that.
I hate falling.
Yeah. It's scary.
And worse, I hate hitting the ground.
Yeah.
I mean,
even with a parachute.
Even with a parachute.
But, we put these expectations on and all of these shoulds, right? And should is like one of my favorite words, and I could do an entire podcast episode about it, but I won't. But like all of these things that we think we should do, that's what an adult human looks like in this context, or a parent looks like, or, even in a career, this is what a project manager looks like, right? We're constantly trying to mold ourselves into what we think other people other people's ideas of what I should be. And so the process of unmasking is really taking that opportunity to go, where is it safe to start experimenting, like to start understanding what I really like, and just assuming, like not assuming that what I'm doing every day is actually the right thing by me, is not my natural preference, is not my natural choice.
And when that mask starts to slip too, I think it can be quite confronting for a lot of people.
Or for other people.
Yeah. And all of a sudden you've gone from potentially somebody who's quite compliant, somebody who's quite passive, somebody that, you know, nothing's ever a problem, or there's, you know, you're always the person that organizes everything, you know, from the moment you get up in the morning, from, you know, the moment you go to sleep. And so when that pushback starts to happen, you know, at the end of the day, you've created a series of boundaries, whether they're unspoken or spoken, as to how you will let other people treat you. And when I've sort of started to unpack a lot of these things and sort of go, well, what am I taking responsibility for in this moment? And it could be anything from, you know, no, I'm not going to run around the house looking for what we're out of to anticipate everyone's needs. I'm creating a, you know, shared
shopping list. Yeah, you add to it. If you run out of something and it's not on the list, do not expect me to remember it now.
Yeah. And just being, you know, taking those steps away from just burning myself out from looking around all the time and trying to notice what everybody might need before they actually need it.
Yeah.
And when I actually thought about it too, and I realized I was actually disabling other people. Because if you've got kids growing up in the house and things like that, they're not learning how to take responsibility for the emotional labor.
Yeah.
And so when it actually comes time to teaching your kids about emotional labor, there's a
shock.
There's a bit of a shock to the system, because the things you used to take care of, you're now putting onto them, and the additional responsibility, you know, again, depending on the age that they are, when they might already be feeling overwhelmed because their world isn't as big as yours. And so when it comes to things like school drama or friendship drama, or, you know, what's going on social media, depending on how old they are, it can feel massive, and the additional responsibilities you're putting onto them are unfair. Yeah. And you've always done it. Why can't you do it now?
Yeah. Why can't you do it now?
Yeah.
And, you know, and everything does feel bigger when we're younger because we don't have that perspective. You know, we also, again, that unknown, right? Like the first time you have to do something for yourself, you don't know what the outcome's going to be. Is this going to be safe for me?
Yeah.
So our brains will go into, you know, fight, freeze, fawn, like, you know, it will be sort of panic stations, you know. And again, that's recognizing that's natural and normal. So the first time you start to unmask, the first time you start to do things and test out things, it may not be comfortable for other people, it may not be comfortable for you, but chances are, you know, you're going to survive it. It'll be okay. Even little things like going, you know what, shoes, I'm going to put it out there, I hate wearing shoes. Pop it in the comments if you're also someone who is not a shoe wearer. I changing climates and living in a part of the country now where it's like in summer it's like 30 degrees. It is perfect permission to not wear shoes most days, and thongs. And then I've got a pair of flip-flops. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Yes. If anyone's listening in America, thongs are flip-flops that you put on your feet, or jandals if you're in New Zealand. You know, or I've got a pair of what's called garden clogs, and they're like debatable slippers, but it's basically a pair of clogs, or like a rubber shoe with a soft lining in it, and I wear them everywhere. But going, you know what? I don't care if you think I'm a weirdo because I'm here without shoes, or, you know, I am wearing garden clogs again to school pickup. That's, at the end of the day, my feet are comfortable. I'm happy. My central nervous system is in check. So, you know, I'm going to do me.
Yeah.
And you do you. And that's okay. And I'm like, you don't have to like it. You don't have to live in this body. That's cool.
Side note, I've actually just thrown out like all my shoes except for a couple of pairs, because I realized I have a new rule now. If I can't walk in them for 15 minutes to like a train station or something along those lines, they have to go. That's my new rule.
I'm struggling with the fact that has to be a rule, and it's probably a whole other question on feminist wardrobes and all of that kind of stuff. Like, but why the purpose of a shoe is to walk in?
I mean, look, I've always had larger feet anyway,
yes.
So finding shoes that fit have always been a bit challenging.
Yeah.
And, you know, for some reason, there's no consistency in shoe sizes for men or for women, which is, again, bizarre.
Wild.
And when it comes to actually looking at my wardrobe now,
But it was another should, right? Like it was, this is what shoes should look like.
This is the professional shoe.
This is the professional shoe. This is the that shoe. And it's actually
the going out shoe.
The criteria is, can I walk in the shoe?
Yeah.
And I think that's a really beautiful analogy. Like, I think that's amazing.
Yeah.
Of like, a simple way of going, does this actually do what it's meant to do?
Cleaned out a lot of wardrobe space too.
Yay!
But I was holding onto stuff too because I was like, oh my God, this is so cute and I should wear these.
I should. Again, that should.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and that might be a place in your life too with the labels, right? If the label's coming from a place of should, is a really good opportunity to pause and go, oh, maybe we should look at this.
Yeah.
Like maybe there's some room here to go, oh, hello.
Yeah.
What's going on under the hood?
And at the end of the day, like I personally don't really need that many shoes anyway. It's just as long as whatever I'm in, I'm comfortable. That's kind of like, that's my new mecca.
Mm.
And I think that, when I look at, again, Frank, the elephant in the room, and looking back on, is this a trend?
Again, mentally, I was
looking for the elephant.
I actually looked for the elephant.
And, the first time that ADHD was, written down as like, hey, these are a bunch of symptoms, and it was in 1798, and then the next one was in 1902. So again, I just come back to this place of, we've always been here.
Mm-hmm.
And the masking levels that us, and I think as we go further and further back in time, there's probably less masking involved.
I think there's been more of a place, right? Like the stuff that makes our brains tricky is a lot of it the pace and speed of modern society.
Mm-hmm.
Like our brains weren't meant to make this many decisions a day, neurotypical or otherwise. Our brains weren't designed to consume this much information, right? Like we're dealing with old hardware here, people, like really outdated hardware. We weren't meant to have this many interactions in a day. We were meant to have rest. We were meant to wake. We weren't
meant to have this amount of cortisol.
Yes, we were meant
streaming through our bodies.
We were meant to wake with the sun and go to sleep with the
sun going down.
Thank you. It's like, what's the opposite of sun? I love
because the moon comes out during the day.
The moon. I'm like, I guess it's not the moon, but at nighttime, we're meant to go to sleep unless you're the hunter, in the group. But all of these things, and we weren't meant to have careers as we do. We weren't meant to sit at desks for our entire day.
Yeah.
All of these things that are an advent of modern life means that the parts that are prickly for us, the parts that are difficult for us, are now probably more pronounced. So it's probably more obvious that there's differences there because we're coming up day and night with structures and systems that are not designed to support us and not designed to support our brains and how we live. So we've always been here. It's not a fad.
We've just always had different roles. And, I think we've touched on this in another episode, but when we talk about ADHD in particular, having really great pattern recognition, for people who are autistic, there's a beautiful level of, orientation to detail and being able to create amazing processes, like all of the talents that each of the neurodiverse people have and neurotypical people have. When we work together, there's an amazing level of cohesion and where it did stem from survival, there's also been the ability to innovate and create in order to be able to get to where we are today.
For sure.
And so looking at kind of, how can we positively reaffirm our position in where we are, particularly in today's society where we have attributed so many negative labels to a neurodiverse diagnosis.
Yeah. So let's use this as an opportunity to look at it differently. And I think, we talk a big part of that too is of just a little bit around looking at some of these labels and looking at our experiences and those type of things. And we'll talk a lot about acceptance and we'll talk a lot about compassion. And, and for me, acceptance was a really powerful tool personally. And it's a tool that a lot of my clients are like, it's revolutionary, right, for their lives when we sort of learn that and we build that skill and we create that knowledge. And it comes from the idea, a lot of times CBT, and I'm not a CBT therapist. I'm not personally a huge fan of it. It is harder for a lot of our neurodivergent brains to do, but it's basically rewiring problematic thoughts and catching them and reauthoring them. And there's a whole lot of other stuff that comes into it. But for a range of different reasons, it can be really tricky for neurodivergent brains. Like if you're seeing all the detail and you're highly analytical, it can be really hard to reauthor a thought.
Yeah.
If you're having 6,000 thoughts, 10,000 tabs open, 3 songs and a music video playing all at the same time in your head, it can be really hard to catch them in the moment.
Of course.
And so acceptance, and it's like in acceptance commitment therapy, it's on the label, but also in dialectical behavioural therapy, which is another modality. And both are really quite affirming for neurodivergent people, with a neurodivergent neuroaffirming therapist. they can be really, really helpful. But it's this idea of just accepting it is what it is, it was what it was. We can't change it. We can't go back in time. We can't revisit it. We're just going to accept that it happened. It doesn't mean we have to like it, but we're not going to live there.
Yes.
We're not going to live there. And the reason that's so important for our brains too, right, is our brains are really smart in lots of sense, but the survival parts of it and the big chunky bits of it that often take over and do the driving are outdated kit, and they can be a little bit stupid, right? And I'll say it's stupid, but like they can't.
Which is another label.
It's another label, but they can't tell the difference between fact and reality and imagine things. So if I'm in a situation where I'm imagining that I am lazy, and I am in a situation where I'm picturing a story that's happened and seeing laziness as part of that, then that is going to be what my brain sees as true. Right? If I'm going back to a difficult situation and we get that familiar feelings of like the pangs in our stomach, and we just go at 2:00 in the morning, oh my God, I can't believe I said that or did that, you know, and that regret and that moments that happen, you know, for a lot of us, if we're being dragged back there, it's like that moment is happening again.
And we're just reliving it.
And we're just reliving it. You're having the same fight-flight response. You're getting the cortisol. You're getting the adrenaline exactly the same way again. So just by accepting it and going, that happened. It wasn't great, but it happened, you know, and it just allowing it to move, that friction reduces, and it starts to let things flow and lets things go easier. And the example I use is it's like picturing the difference between cars driving past you, right, and like a driver waving at you and you're waving back at the car, right, and they're driving past you, and it might be, you know, the car that is guilt, the car that is remorse, the car that is anger, right? It's very different waving at the car from an overpass versus having that car pull up and getting in and going for a ride, right? They're two different things. So it's about trying to create that distance and trying to create that space. And when we allow those things to come and go, it's just a lot easier. It's a lot kinder to us. It's a lot kinder to our nervous system. So, acceptance is a big thing. And it's an easier bridge for a lot of people than compassion, because compassion means more of embracing it, wrapping your arms around it, you know, taking it as part of you, seeing it as helpful. And sometimes that can be a bridge too far. So if you're on the compassion wagon and you want to get into compassion and wrapping your arms around your whole brain and going, thanks, brain, I know you're trying to help, but not now. And that works for you, you know, and that compassion angle will aim for that. But if you're more in the acceptance space and that's easier and safer for you right now, that's okay too. But we need these things to create the room so that we're not getting in the car and going for a drive with every thought, feeling and label that comes across our path.
Yeah, I love that. It actually reminds me quite a lot of, I think they call it instinctive elaboration, where I think I've heard it referred to online as the lucky girl syndrome. And so it's actually where, because your brain is hardwired for survival, as you said, the more you it's crap in, crap out at the end of the day. So if you're feeding your brain to look for all of the negative elements in your life, so it's constant reinforcement of, why am I so lazy? Why can't I just do this? It's so easy for everybody else. Why can't I just get it?
And our brains will default to that by nature. So if your brain is doing that, it's naturally doing that because it's hardwired to spot the danger.
Yeah.
It's hardwired to spot the snake crawling out from the bush.
Yeah.
You know, it's hardwired to spot, you know, that this weather pattern's happening, right? It's I need to find shelter.
It's all related
to survival. So if you're finding yourself noticing the bad,
it's normal.
Welcome. Yeah.
But the more you question that aspect, the more your brain will actually search for evidence that will actually verify those things. And the more it intrinsically is a conscious or unconscious belief, it's a core narrative that you're telling yourself. And so uncovering what those core narratives are, it's actually really hard. But when you actually start asking your brain the kinds of questions to positively affirm the things in your life, and that's why they call it the lucky girl syndrome, or let's face it, like the lucky person syndrome, is that you will start asking yourself, why is my life getting better? Why am I suddenly so smarter? And so the more you start reframing these previously negative thoughts and you know, it's that rewiring that comes to it, your brain will actually start looking for all the positive things in your life. It'll start looking for all the reasons why you're so much smarter. And I think that the more we can actually, catch ourselves in that moment, go, why am I so stupid? And then reframing it to be like, why is it that people around me value me and think that I'm so smart? And
what is my pattern of brilliance?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, what are the things that I'm good at?
Mm.
What are my strengths? The more you start looking for them,
the less you see the stupid.
Yeah, the easier they are to find.
Mm.
And so over time, it's a practice, right?
Well, yeah.
Everything is a practice. You can't just do it once and expect it to, all of a sudden
You're
change your
building
life.
neural pathways here, people. Like, that is what you are doing. It's like you are creating a new pathway in the wood, right? It's going to take a while to get there.
Absolutely. Yeah. And this is really interesting because there was a Harvard Business Review article that came out a little while ago talking about high-performing teams.
Mm.
Why do teams, what is it about high-performing teams? What do they do differently?
Mm-hmm.
And they realized that for every negative thing that was said, there was 5 positive things. And so, you think about that for a second. And similar with childhood development too. Yeah. High-performing children have very similar criticism to positive reinforcement ratios. So
jinx.
This happens a lot. And so when it actually comes to looking at things like, well, for yourself, if you want to achieve more, if you want to shift those labels, then for every one negative thing you think about yourself, so, I'm so lazy, then think 5 positive things. Okay, I'm so lazy, but I'm also highly efficient at being able to organize my kids' lunches. I'm also highly efficient, or I'm very productive at work. I can, paint an entire room, starting at 9 o'clock and getting to 1:30, and I've got two coats, which is the room that we're sitting in.
And the flowers.
And the flowers.
And the fairy lights.
Yeah.
I can build a podcast in 6 weeks.
Yeah. And so if you can kind of combine those two, pieces, one, look for the positive things, and two, every time you sort of catch yourself out with one negative thing, reinforce it with 5 positive things. Mm-hmm. And similarly within relationships as well. And Gottman is a big one for this. And Gottman did a lot of research and have done a lot of research to understand why couples stay together and why they separate, why they get divorced. And so, bidding was a big one, which is probably for a much longer episode. Bids of, hey, come look at this, and somebody would be willing to drop what they're doing and come over. But they also discovered that for couples that had high rates of divorce, they got 3 positive things for every 4 negative things.
So instead of 5 positives, 1 negatives, the divorced people were getting, sorry, my brain auditory processing is interesting, they were getting 4 negatives for every 3 positives. So it was an opposite.
Yeah, you were in a positive sort of deficit. And so it's really kind of interesting when you actually start catching yourself, criticizing somebody, saying something negative. Elements are, it could be projection. It could be the fact that it's been building up for quite some time. There's so many different reasons why somebody might get something, negative said to them. But without that positive reinforcement of the things that you love about them, the things, their positive attributions and things like that, and particularly staying away from those blanket statements. You're always so stupid. You're always late. And it reinforces that label, right? This is who I am. This is who I've always been. This is who I'll always be. And so it's really important to be able to, if you're having an argument, to be able to separate out what you're actually saying and keep it to the current thing, not to pull stuff out of the past, not to, dredge things up and everything, but also remembering that, again, in a relationship and a partnership, you're on the same team, you're not adversaries.
Yeah.
And so when you look at the relationship you have with yourself and how many times I've treated myself as an adversary and not a member of my own team, which is wild, having that ability to have that compassion and say, why am I trying to work against myself? Why do I constantly put myself down? Why do I constantly feel like I'm failing? And so when I ask myself those questions, I now reframe them to be like, why is it that I have been able to achieve so much? Why is it that I have, not failed, but why wasn't I successful in this endeavor? What amazing parts about me got me this far? What can I do better next time?
Yeah. I love that. And that's such a beautiful summary of like a really practical compassion strategy, because the voices we say to ourselves and how we talk to ourselves is so critical. And, you know, our brains, again, will look to prove us right. They will look for that pattern and survival mechanism too, right? So after a bit of time, you start going, the answer is, I am difficult, right? You know, it's me being difficult. That then becomes almost the excuse for everything, becomes the explanation for everything. So then we automatically start opting out of stuff.
Yeah.
You know, and the time that I'm not difficult, you know, we might deflect it and we might make a joke and go, well, that's a miracle I was, you know, not difficult today. You know, we might delete it or like not remember it. You know, we might distort it and go like, well, that was difficult. That was different. You know, it was different because, you know, you'd had a sleep in today. So that's why you weren't difficult, you know, or we'll dismiss it as like, well, that's never going to happen again, right? So our brains will constantly translate and change information to fit the narrative we're feeding it. So when we're more accepting of things, when we're more compassionate to ourselves, that really can fundamentally change our outlook on things without actually changing the circumstances.
Yeah.
It's really powerful,
Absolutely.
really amazing stuff.
Yeah, and having that ability to also realize that most of us don't actually know ourselves. Like, you have a sense, might be a vague feeling. Some people have very staunch views, but it needs to have the ability to be flexible, and you need to be able to stop assuming and having that really black and white thinking.
Which again, as neurodivergent people, like particularly...
You mean there's grey?
Yeah, you mean there's grey, there's different grey. But, you know, just trying to shift away from that, create the space. And I found a really effective tool in being able to do that is just being that curious and asking how and why and what if. And I wonder. I wonder is a great sentiment to use, right? If it's not lazy, right, because lazy's been the default, or stupid or difficult, right? Difficult's been the default. If I'm not being difficult, I wonder what else I might be. So if you're not in the space of being able to be fully compassionate with yourself and exercise that voice and look at that view, just being curious about, I wonder what else could be going on here, or our kids are doing something, right? You know, and our kids are doing something, we're looking at them and going, oh, you're being difficult. Whoa, I wonder what else might be going on here, you know? And because human beings, and we talk a bit about, I'm sure we'll talk quite a bit about Dr. Ross Green and his amazing CPS model, but, you know, that ethos that kids will do well if they can. It's not if they want to. Kids will do well if they can, but I fundamentally believe human beings will do well if we can as well. So if we're struggling, we're finding resistance, that I wonder what might be going on here. I wonder might be happening here, rather than putting a label on it. The label's the easy out. The label's the easy answer, right? You know, the label is the simple thing to do that gives us safety, that gives us comfort in the moment of going, I know what that is, as opposed to diving into curiosity and going, what else could be happening here? What else explains this? How is this happening? Why is it happening?
Yeah, and particularly like when you also widen that view as well and look at, you know, certain relationships, I think there's also quite a lot of fear in giving compliments or giving praise to another person in such a way as to, you know, 5-to-1 as a ratio is actually quite overwhelming for some people. Colloquially, there's
My husband's listening. I'm very sorry. I'm not doing that.
There is a fear of, well, first of all, what if it's not reciprocated?
Yeah.
What if the other person continues to say, you're so inconsiderate, you're so this and you're so that. So what if I make this effort? What if I open myself up? What if I'm vulnerable? And the other person isn't receptive or reciprocal? Yeah. And
so like that, accepting that the other person may not say it back. And
absolutely.
Okay. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, you're setting weirdly, it's almost setting a standard, setting a rule, setting a boundary that this is how I'm going to behave to you. And you can even say, this is how I would like you to behave towards me. And there's that beautiful element of communication, being able to communicate your needs, your wants, your desires. And so
verbally or otherwise.
You can even write it down.
Of different communications. Yeah.
And so there's often a fear, but I think, you know, the lack of reciprocation is often a big sort of roadblock for a lot of people, as well. My partner and I have been stuck in this cycle for so long that what if we can't change? And I'd like to say that there is always room for change. There is always room for compassion. And then the other side of it as well is potentially feeling a little bit inauthentic. If you're not used to saying positive things, it can feel very weird to begin with. I know that I get a physical reaction every time I give somebody a compliment. I start to tear up, and it's because
I love that about you.
yeah, it's even happening now. And I don't know why, but I know that it comes a lot with emotional dysregulation. I know that it comes with, just being, wanting to be in an environment where people are constantly praising each other, not because it's expected, not because there's an expectation of a compliment in return and fishing for compliments and things like that, but because I think it's such an amazing gift for someone to hear the positive things that they've done for you.
Mm.
And whether it's returned or not, I think the giving is the most beautiful part about it, because a gift is essentially and critically, a gift is giving without the expectation of receiving.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. And it's so funny as you say that too, because I'm like, in my head, I'm looking at you and I'm spinning my pen and I'm listening, and half my brain's going to, I wonder what's going on here for me, because I'm somebody that is not great with giving compliments. With my daughter, it's very easy. It's very natural. I go but I mean, to me, she's just like a wonder. Like, I see her every day and I'm like, how are you such a cool human being? Like, I love you so much. But other people in my life, I really struggle to give compliments. And so in my head, as you're saying this, I'm trying to work out what's going on there for me. And I know I'm also quite hard on myself, where I have been, and that's been a huge part of me unmasking and living a more authentic life, is coming back to my values and working out what is actually important to me and what is not important to me. Like, what are the values that I live by? And then I can let go of the other stuff. And I think it's, having that monotropic brain a little bit as well, where I can focus on one thing really at a time, and having that singular focus. By narrowing my values down for me and focusing on what are the things that are important to me from a values perspective, what are the things that I choose to do, and I use those to make decisions every day.
Yeah.
But I also use those to speak to myself. So, like, kindness is a big one for me.
Yeah.
I know that will shock you. Fairness is,
Doesn't
fairness is a really, really huge one for me. But also as well, like, creativity is another big one. Problem solving, achievement is a big one for me, and getting stuff done, but doing it for me, not doing it for other people. It's not about winning, it's about achieving, right? And so being clear on what those, and learning is a big one, but like narrowing that down, to a smaller list of values, help me be kinder and notice those things in myself.
Yeah.
And so I wonder, as you're saying that too, like, I'm wondering, like, bugger lugs here, sort of the wheels are turning very slowly, but I wonder if that might be an avenue as well of going, what are my own values, and then noticing my own values in other people, because so that those compliments are genuine. So, when I see my partner being kind, when I see my beautiful friend being, creative, when I see learning happening, calling it out through the lens of my values kind of helps build a bridge and helps make that a little bit safer, so that it does feel authentic. Because, like, for me, I can't not be authentic. Is that a sentence?
That's a thing.
It's a thing. But, like, yeah, it's a really important
It's a double negative, but it's a thing.
It's a thing. I love English language. It's amazing. But yeah, so I wonder as well, like, if that might be like a lens or a different sort of door to open to make compliments easier.
Because, I mean, even when you said that, I was like, that's not true. I heard you the other day, say to somebody how much you appreciated the fact that they were flexible in some childcare arrangements or, dog arrangements.
My fur baby.
Yeah. And it was, I heard you express gratitude, say that you don't take it for granted. And also when they were starting to sort of potentially, understand what it was that you were trying to say in the subtext, you reframed it and said it really plainly so that they understood that you were appreciative of their efforts, and that you weren't just expecting it as a given.
Yeah.
And so, but I do know that didn't always come easily for you, and that's
Still
something.
Doesn't.
Yeah. But you're taking the time and that beautiful grace to let people know how you feel about them, and that you appreciate them.
I just need to work on the ratio. I need to get the ratio. And again, that's nice having that beautiful, and I love that about you, that you take the time to notice that and to reflect and reframe that for me when I may not be able to see that myself, and you take the time and you're paying attention and you notice so much. It's amazing. But, like, it's really powerful sometimes having that person to play back a different view of what you see, because what we see is maybe not.
You cannot work
accurate.
in a vacuum.
But like, yeah, again, it's like in my head, I don't give enough compliments, right? That's a story that's happening for me right now. So I'm like, how do I give more compliments? You know, how can I? And it's actually acknowledging the times that we do. And then, okay, you're already doing it. How can you do it? You're doing it in this circumstance, or you're doing it with this person. How can you then, you've got the skills, you know the solution. This is like a solutions-focused therapy tool, right? Like, I can do it in that context. How can I now apply it to a different context?
Right.
And so much of this stuff that we do, it's like, well, I'm not lazy at work, or I'm not stupid here. So I know how to not be stupid. Like, how can I then apply what I'm learning?
Yeah.
Apply that same technique in other contexts, other roles in my life.
But just like break out that idea for a second. Think about all of the different areas that you need to kind of show up in your life, right? So you've got immediate family for one thing. Then you've got your extended family. You've got work. You've got home. You've got friends. Then you've got any hobbies. And then any other sort of external commitments.
Like external commitments, all of that sort of stuff. Do we cover friendships?
I think I did.
Okay.
Yeah, if not, let's add it.
Yep.
And so when you actually, you know, if you were to take it and look at it like a plate in terms of segments, and obviously everybody's, you know, slices of pie on their plate is going to be a little bit different in terms of the weight or the value that they add to those sectors. But you have to think about all the different roles that you play in that. And also the term that I love is sonder, which is the, and, you know, externalize it first. So it's the impression, or it's the knowledge that every single other person around you is living vivid and highly complex, detailed lives of which you could live 1,000, 1,000,000 lifetimes and still never actually understand everything and the complexity and everything that's going on around you. And so I think that's an amazing kind of, you know, way to sort of look at everybody and go, well, I accept that I'm never going to fully understand what's going on inside everybody else's life. But then turn it around and realize that you are your own massively wonderful, complex, vivid creature living your own detailed life full of all, you know, the tangled webs that we weave and everything that comes with it, but also realizing that no one, no matter how well they might know you, will ever actually get to see the full sort of capacity in all of that. And sort of there's what I see as an opportunity for grace, right? Because on the one hand, realizing that you'll never actually fully understand what's going on with everybody, but also understanding that when people judge you, they'll actually never really know what's going on inside. And so then you think about it in the form of all the impressions, all the people you've ever met in your life, each one of them has walked away with a different impression of you. And so when you think about, you know, how you might have potentially segmented your personality or your constructs or your labels, you know, how you show up in each of those different slices of pie, that's an enormous load.
It's huge
to carry.
Yeah.
And so kind of being able to potentially simplify, you know, pull some of the pieces together so that, you know, there's less sort of separation between the two of them. Or if you like that separation, knowing that you like that separation and having that clear view of,
I'm intentionally putting the mask on. Yeah. Right. I'm doing it by choice, not by default.
Yeah, because not all masks are bad.
No. And masks are there for a reason. And I love that. And that's where I find the values piece is really, really helpful, coming back to that, because you can work out what your values are, and often they can transcend role. Yeah. You know, the values that we hold and we carry, and sometimes they can change over a lifetime, and that's fine. But those values are who I am in my core, you know, and it's like that's what's important to me, and it's a really helpful tool to help you navigate and find some commonality if those worlds are seeming completely different.
Absolutely.
Or labels are seeming tricky, but I love that person that's seeing me is never going to know the full me. Yeah. Right. They're never going to. So their label might apply in that context. It might apply in that situation, but it doesn't mean I need to keep it.
Yep. It also might mean that
it may not be accurate.
That person at that time was impatient. Maybe you weren't being fast enough. Maybe you weren't acting quickly enough to their liking based off of their own expectations and their own series of demands and whatever externalized or internalized pressures they have got going on. So again, having that compassion, I think, is also really important, because even if it might be hard, and I think about forgiveness a lot, right? I think about the people who in my life over the years have very unjustly or unkindly labeled me with things that I've had to carry or felt that I've had to carry
Mm.
for a long period of time. And looking back with this view of acceptance and forgiveness. And I talk about forgiveness a lot as forgiveness is basically like a train station,
Mm-hmm.
or a train, I should say. So I'm on the train of forgiveness, but, you know, it's basically the...
So I just want to say toot toot.
But it's also like the train station, right?
Yeah.
Now I can choose to get off at that train station.
Yeah.
And I might be sitting on the platform for a while, and I might get back on the train, and the train might take me around another loop cycle of anger and frustration and guilt and shame,
Resentment, all the family,
and all that sort of stuff. And then I'll get off on the station again. But until I actually choose to leave the train station,
yep,
I will
disembark, swipe out.
Yeah,
yep.
I will continue to be on that cycle.
That loop, yeah.
But I talk about forgiveness, that you can't just get off at the train station once and walk away.
Mm.
Like there is often a process that has to happen. And often that comes through unmasking, and often it comes through having that beautiful tool for acceptance, because, you know, different traumas will affect us differently. And at a certain point, we might realize that you can never really see the big picture, right? Like you need to be able to take little bites and little moments to have those aha moments. And the one that really came for me was understanding that the person who tormented me the most in my life also had a terrible parent.
And where they learn.
And so the realization that, you know, they had a traumatic childhood, they had never formally or officially sort of emotionally matured, that having the ability to understand that about the other person, it was huge. It was this moment of realizing all I was crying out for attention. And, you know, maybe I was crying out for the wrong kind of attention, but there was an unmet need there.
Yeah.
And that person in that moment was unable to meet my needs.
Yep.
And so that's
when you were unable to meet their expectations.
Yeah. And that's so where I got the label.
Repeats. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's amazingly powerful. And I think it was Oprah that did this definition. I can't believe I'm referencing Oprah.
I can't believe it either.
But there we go. But, you know, and this was really powerful for me, is understanding this, and forgiveness, and it comes back to the acceptance. Forgiveness is letting go or giving up on the idea that the past can be any different.
Yeah.
So it's that happened. It wasn't great. And I like to assume good intent, and, you know, because we can't reinvent what's happened. No. We can't reauthor it. So we can reauthor it. We can't change what happened. But also as well, that I like to assume that the person at the time was doing the best they could, you know, with the tools and the resources they've got, and and the information that they've got, everything at their disposal, they were doing the best they could at the time with what they had in that moment. And, you know, it's always easy to look back later and go, oh, I wish, or, you know, seeing a consequence of something. But in that moment, you're doing the best you can. And shout out to any parents or mums that are listening too, right? And this is where a lot of mum guilt comes from. And I could, you know, I mean, that's like
that's
a whole other podcast. But like, you know, but looking at that and just giving yourself the grace to go, I wasn't perfect today. I might have thrown my toys out of the pram. I might have snapped. I might have been difficult. I might have been sensitive. I might have been lazy. I might have been stupid.
Have had any more spoons.
I might have been self-centered. I might have been all of these things in one day. All before breakfast, right? But I did the best I could at the time with the tools that I had, and being kind and forgiving yourself that it wasn't fantastic, but it just happened. It can't change, and what can we learn from it? How can we grow?
Yeah, absolutely. And the knowledge that it takes time to scar your child for life.
Yeah. You know, and the thing that I love about, we're talking about human evolution this morning over breakfast, as you do. And, you know, and the whole thing that, you know, we're talking about, I hope that my daughter one day looks back at how I raised her and like, Mum, what were you thinking? Like, you know, and judging everything that I've done as completely wrong, because that's a sign to me that as a, you know, human beings, as a society, as a planet spinning through the space, we're evolving and we're growing and we're learning, right? The definition of fail to me is that the next generation looks back at what the previous generation's done and gone, you nailed it, you got everything right, because it means we've stopped growing. And so, you know, looking back in ourselves in the own way, and you know, whilst I loved, you know, 16-year-old Freya and 12-year-old Freya and 27-year-old Freya, and I loved her for who she was at the time, I made mistakes. I got things wrong. I'm doing the same thing today. But that ability to look back and recognise that and see that in itself is a beautiful indication that I've grown.
Absolutely.
And that's something really to be quite proud of.
100%. We can have acceptance for the way things are, but we commit to changing by asking the right questions.
Yeah. And also, does that label still fit?
Yeah.
There was a label from 27 years ago.
I think I've changed as a person.
Yeah.
On a biological cell level. I mean, I've gone through, what is it, every 7 years?
It's a new renewal, yeah.
Yeah, it's every cell in your body has renewed over that period of 7 years. And so you've actually technically been a new human 3 times.
Yeah, exactly. But I'm still holding on to this label that someone gave me, in a year 3 sports class.
Oh my gosh.
Like a PE class, right? Yeah. So it's a really, great opportunity to do that. And this is, I think, why we're both so passionate about this and creating this narrative and working it through. So I guess now's probably time to share some of the spice jar tools.
Tips.
So that's when you know that you're almost out of your misery. The episode is coming towards coming towards an end. The ramblings will stop.
Self-deprecating.
Yeah, I love that.
That's a whole nother episode.
That's deflection. But yeah, we're going to share some, we call them spice jar tools, and it's just something you might choose to take away with you or not. You can download them, on our website and have a view of what they are. We do need to do this nice little disclaimer. They are for education and information purposes only.
They are not a substitute for therapy.
They are not advice.
And as always, if you want to try them, that's great. If they work for you, amazing. If they don't work for you, don't keep trying them.
Yeah, that's totally, all those things are okay. And if you are having a hard time at the moment and you do need to reach out for some specialist support and some qualified support with a mental health professional, there are a huge range of resources out there no matter where you are in the world.
Absolutely.
And, do that because you are worth it. You're not an inconvenience.
Your feelings are valid.
Yep. We say that a lot. Your feelings are valid. And there will be someone who's able to help you and support you because you don't always have to feel that way.
Yeah.
So with that said, into the tools, what one have you got?
So it's a recap of what we were talking about. Set aside some time and just go, right, in this relationship, these are my labels. In this relationship, these are the labels I've given to my partner. Taking that time to evaluate, are they real? Do they still apply? And then committing to moving forward and reinforcing anytime you think something negative, follow it up with 5 positive things and then start saying them out loud. And the more you reinforce it, the more you actually tend to find that you will reconnect over things, that you'll have a better rapport and how that actually will then show up for you in the bedroom.
Yeah, and even giving compliments in the bedroom. Even
Absolutely.
saying 5 nice things.
Or vocalizing what you like and what you don't like.
Yeah.
Those are so important things that I think that, if you've been in a relationship for a number of years, there's the assumption that
the other person knows.
Yeah. And also sometimes a resentment that, why do I have to tell you this again? But, do it in such a way that allows for that positive reinforcement so the other person doesn't think that you're directing them or they're like some sort of performing monkey.
I love that. Such a good tool.
Yeah, what have you got this week?
So for me, it's just about thinking about, the roles that we play in our lives, right? And all of those different wedges of the pie wheel that you've spoken about, but just those different roles that we play. And it's really funny, like if you think about it, every single role we have in our life is transient.
Yeah.
There's no one that's with us from cradle to grave. Right? So like, are you always going to be a daughter? Are you always going to be a sister? Are you always going to be a mother? Are you always going to be in this particular job or a student?
Yeah.
Or, all of those different roles that we're playing, right? And we play a huge amount of roles at any given time. So looking at the roles that you're currently playing and filling that out in your little pie wheel. And then, going through those and going, well, what are the labels that I wear, in that role, right? Because there might be some consistency across the board, but there might actually be some differences, right? Positive labels, uncomfortable labels, good labels, bad labels, whatever you call them, but what are the labels that I'm actually wearing?
Yeah.
And then actually just going through and sorting them a little bit to go, well, which ones of those feel a little bit unfair? Which ones of those feel a little bit unjust? Which of those do I actually want to keep carrying? Which ones do I want to let go of? And just starting that conversation with yourself and that awareness, and, I think in the same thing in the labels you're wearing in your relationship, right? But just starting to create that awareness that I am carrying labels. And I may not be conscious of a lot of them that I'm carrying. I may have self-labeled myself. It may be something that keeps coming up and I don't know why, I don't know where it's coming from, but actually know that's not serving me.
Yeah.
I'm not getting in the car with you and going for a drive anymore. Like, I'm not
stranger danger.
Strange danger. You know, I'm not doing that. But just at starting that narrative and just starting that awareness, you know, to be able to sort and make sense of it and categorize it, but maybe in a slightly different way.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, because there will be consistency across different parts of our lives.
Yeah.
But they may show up in different ways.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So you might be called disorganized consistently in every part of your life, you know, or you might be called self-centered by lots of people, or it might be like in one particular context, you know, you might be called sensitive and it might be by a particular person or whatever. And it's just that awareness of it and seeing that is that first part of opening the door and starting to create that different dialogue and that reframe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the fact that if somebody is calling you something, that you do not need to take it on board, you do not need to accept it. And it's literally like, you know, might be going through a cupboard and, you know, looking at, you know, all the different clothing and then holding it up to yourself and just being like, no, this is not mine.
This is not me anymore.
This is not me
This
anymore.
is not me anymore. I can't walk in these shoes.
Yeah.
You know, yeah.
And it's also okay to push back against somebody else and just be like, thank you for your feedback.
Yeah.
I do not accept it.
Yeah. I love it. And it's like, you know, we talk about this podcast. It was also, as we're talking about this and joking around too, like the one thing in our house that seemed to be labelled.
Oh my gosh.
Not necessarily well, but labelled was the spice jar. Like, you know, the spice rack in our house, like all the spice jars largely labelled, maybe different labels, maybe like highly inconsistently. They might be in different jars. It might be all these different things, but at least everything had a label and, it, you know, that ability then to sort and go, I am, you know, never going to make something with juniper berries ever. Like, do I actually still need to keep
I can
this?
make gin.
You could do that.
It would be terrible, but I could try.
Terrible, but you could try. But, you know, all these, again, we tend to accumulate all these spices we might have cooked in a recipe at one time a very, very long
People
time
might
ago.
have given to us as, you know, Christmas gifts or whatever the case may be.
Exactly, or the celebrity chef of the moment, like, oh, that was my Heston phase. That was my Jamie Oliver phase. That was my
I
Maggie
still
Beer,
have a
my
bottle of Verve
Nigella.
juice.
Yeah. Visual. I love it. I think your mum gave me one of those.
Oh, no doubt.
But yeah, it's you know, but it's that opportunity to look at that and go, you know, do I still want this cluttering up my drawer?
Yeah, yeah.
Like,
or am I ever going to use this? And
yeah,
also the thing that I love about my own spice drawer is that when the spice runs out, I can peel off the label and put a new one on.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of where we thought about, you know,
relabeling. Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, you know, over time you might find that, you know, some of your behaviors have made you less, air quote, lazy. And keeping in mind as well that people's first impressions of you are so cemented, and how long and how much time and how hard or the consistency that you need to demonstrate a behavior to then, you know, change that person's
impression.
opinion.
Yeah, because their brains are wired to prove them right.
Yep.
And to prove their narrative right.
And so ask them the question. So, you know, if you get called the lazy, you know, the self-centered label because you might be 20 minutes late or something like that, but then they go, oh, you're so self-centered because you're so late all the time. Even if you ask them, like, when was the last time before this that I was late? And their brains will do the same thing and they'll go, oh, well, yeah, actually it has been a while, rather than, you know, the common occurrence. This is the exception to the rule. And so, you know, asking them the questions, it will also help them reframe their brain. Yeah. And so, again, I look at spice jars in the same way that over time you might be, you know, yes, I might be a full bottle of lazy. And then over time you're basically, you know, ebbing out. Yeah. And so until it gets lower and lower and lower until you realize that there's actually nothing left in the spice jar. I'm just keeping it and the label is just, it's still on there. But I think
label's got to go.
I think that it's still part of my, you know, arsenal of spices because that label's still there. And in reality, you can just peel it off, stick another one on. So actually, I'm not lazy. I'm efficient.
Exactly. And also as well with the other spice jar analogy, and we spent quite a bit of time on this at 5 o'clock in the morning, but like
you're 5, my 7.
You're 7. Like disturbing regularity, but like a disturbing amount of time. But, you know, also as well that you can have spices in a mix too, right? Like so all because it can have a little bit of chili powder in there, right? It might actually be a Mexican spice rub. Or it might actually be, you know, garam masala or something like that. Like, so you can have a little bit of one thing and something else. So it's not necessarily just one thing that's in there. There can be lots of things going on.
It's not black or white.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Your feelings are valid.
Yeah. And if it sounds like we might have over-intellectualized some of this,
chances are we
probably
absolutely
we
have. Yeah. So if you, I don't know if we covered in this one, but I'm an autistic ADHD, she's an autistic ADHD. So, you know, it's going to be a wild ride. We are going to overanalyze. We are going to dive in. We're going to go on weird tangents. We're going to overshare.
I love the weird tangents.
So fun.
Our brains are not linear, and that's what I love about them, because that's where the creative problem solving comes into it. Yeah. So I frustrate so many people because they're just like, just get to the point.
Yeah.
But the reality is that I look at the stories that I tell, literally like a spider web, and I have to tell you all the connecting points around it so that it makes sense to you, so you can see the pattern.
Yes.
When the reality is that, you know, I've taken literally the train from A to Z to E to F, and then maybe back to, you know, S.
She's got a URL pass and she's booking at 3:00 in the morning.
Yeah,
after
and then
a big night out.
And then I might come back to Z again, you know, like I won't hit the points in the order, but I hit them in the order that I think is most important.
That makes sense for you. Yeah. And that's part of the wild ride that it is. And I love sitting here and being like, I wonder where this is going to land. But it always lands beautifully and like in an amazing place. And it's just, it's so good. And you know, we've got notes here and laughingly, we call them notes because we go, I'm sure we're going to, like today's notes, I have gone places I didn't think that I would. Yep. And hopefully it's been a fun ride for you. And
not a roller coaster.
Not a roller coaster, unless you like those, and good for you if you do.
I'd pass.
I will take a roller coaster every day of the week. I'm mad for them. But yeah, that's, I guess, going to be a little taste of the journey. So this week we wanted to take the time to sort of talk about how we got here and talk about labels more broadly. So we've then got the context in coming weeks to start unpacking the labels. Let's see if we can remember all the ones we're going to cover this season. So we've got stupid,
lazy,
weird,
difficult,
sensitive,
self-centered,
blunt. How could I forget blunt? Out of all of them for me to forget, I can't believe I effing well forgot blunt. Yes, so we're going to uncover those labels in the coming weeks. So again, we're going to reflect, reframe. So episode 1 will be a chance to reflect on it, what that means, and then episode 2 for each label, we will reframe and share a tool which may or may not help you look at things a bit differently.
Yeah. And look, some of them will come with trigger warnings as well.
Yep.
So we will make sure to keep you updated as to what they may be, so you can choose to listen or not.
Yep.
And stay along for the ride.
Yeah. So hopefully you've enjoyed listening. We have honestly had such a blast doing this, and I couldn't think of a better buddy to drive over the cliff with. It's a Thelma and Louise. Thelma and Louise reference for anyone playing along. But
anybody was born in the 80s.
Just so true, right? But yeah, thank you so much for joining us on The Spicy Life this week. And next week we'll be back to actually start unpacking one of those labels.
Yeah. Thanks so much, guys. And look, as always, we'd love your comments. We'd love your feedback. You know, drop us a line, and we look forward to hearing from you.
Yeah. And until then, stay spicy. You're listening to the Neurospice and Life podcast
with Hanna and Freya, besties, brains, and more.
If you've enjoyed listening, follow us on YouTube or your favourite podcast app and share it with someone else who knows the sting of a sticky label.
We'll see you next time. Until then, stay spicy, stay wonderful.